In 1962, Rachel Carson's seminal book, Silent Spring, was published. The book took on big chemical companies and warned that the prodigious use of pesticides would have long-term negative consequences for our environment and us. Silent Spring not only inspired ecologists to call for us to interact with nature in a different way, it helped create the modern environmental movement, leading to the establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency and eventually passage of milestone legislation. The National Environmental Policy Act, known as NEPA, was signed by Republican President Richard Nixon in 1970. NEPA was official acknowledgement of America's decades of environmental abuse and neglect. It was the country's response, a national charter to protect our environment. NEPA's impact cannot be overstated. That's why it's often referenced as the Magna Carta of federal environmental law. NEPA was soon followed by another piece of landmark legislation in 1973, the Endangered Species Act, or ESA. Because of these protections, all federal agencies must evaluate the environmental impact of their actions and work to conserve endangered species, plants, and their habitats. But there's a blind spot with NEPA and the Endangered Species Act. When it comes to population growth and its impact on our environment, federal agencies operate as if they're exempt from NEPA and the Endangered Species Act. Even with historically high immigration-driven population growth since NEPA became law, no environmental impact study has been conducted by the Department of Homeland Security or its predecessor, the INS. We don't have the data to decide if we need more, less, or about the same levels of immigration, because the government has failed to provide appropriate studies about the environmental impact of population growth. Yet the link between population growth and environmental degradation is clear from science-based research. Population growth exerts overwhelming force on the environment. Rapid growth of areas already high in carbon emissions presents the most dire threat to biodiversity, largely through habitat loss. Beyond science, the connection between population and the environment seems obvious. More people means more cars and more air pollution. More construction of housing, commercial space, and roads means less green space and habitat for animals and plants, essential for healthy ecosystems. And more people means more pressure on water and other resources. Today, the number one factor driving America's population growth is mass immigration. When will it make sense to keep immigration policies in line with environmental and economic realities? Should there be a moratorium? A period of time where we can assess the impact of mass immigration? Unfortunately, the Trump administration is about to make that more difficult. They're attempting to shift power away from the EPA to states as the primary arbiters of environmental laws and regulations. This would greatly weaken the EPA and its ability to apply consistency when it comes to population growth as it relates to the environment. Mr. President, instead of weakening the EPA, why not strengthen it by creating a bureau within the EPA to study population growth's environmental impact? The bureau would remove NEPA's blind spot and have jurisdiction over immigration and naturalization programs to ensure future policies draw on data from environmental impact studies. And while studies are being conducted, temporarily pause immigration until the impacts can be better understood and sound recommendations made. Mr. President, other administrations have failed to study population growth's impact on our natural resources and treasures. You're presented with an opportunity to create an environmental legacy, not just for you, but for generations of Americans. Remember, economic prosperity isn't the sole measure of a president's success. Part of making America great again is making it green again.